hashtag Black woman, she is so passionate about this topic. And I think that a lot of her points and concerns are being overlooked. One thing I heard a lot last week in the conversation was this term gaslighting, and you just used that term again, Amawale.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that is appropriate in the moment, because she is raising some really good conversations, some really good points. Now, when I was just listening a while ago, I heard our sister Chez, Chardé, bring in a lot of reasons as to why we have the number of single mothers in our community. And to be honest, I just feel that it was really disingenuous in nature, just as a lot of the other things that have been said by our sister Maya Speaks was as well. One thing I think these ladies have is passion for the community, and they love our Black men, as do I. But I feel that even through that passion and that dedication to the community, women that hold these perspectives as it relates to Black men in general are doing them a great disservice. And that's one thing that I also feel about you, Mr. Amawale, because you are so passionate, you are so smart. I've learned just some amazing things from you. And the guests that you bring on, the conversations that you hold, just dynamic for our community. But there's a lot of excuse making being done for Black men. And at the end of the day, we have to really get honest and real with ourselves and say what's next. We keep talking about deflection and scapegoating and gaslighting, but we really need to talk about the issues that we have in our community. And
so if we're having conversations about restoring or repairing that unit, it starts first and foremost with the individual units in that unit repairing a relationship that they have with themselves. So that's men doing the work to heal self. So that we always talk about therapy and healing and developing emotionally, but it's also women doing the relationship, doing the work that they need to do to heal the relationship that they have with themselves. Why is that necessary? That's necessary because those two parties can't even begin to have a conversation that's rooted in healing, right? That's not rooted in who's right and who's wrong. That's not rooted in black and white or zero-sum game. They can't begin to have a therapeutic conversation until both parties agree that we both need to do work on self, which is the purpose of tonight's conversation. You've seen most of my content for season 1 of Race, Manhood, and Power. It was all about the work that we as Black men need to do on ourselves. A lot of people who watch the show raised a really good point over these last couple of weeks about, okay, we always talk about, there's never been a problem with us, critiquing Black men, holding Black men to the flame for what Black men need to be doing. I mean, you just showed up and did it within the first 5 minutes. Cool, we get that. But when will it be okay for us to look at our women as adults, as people with full agency and full humanity, and say, hey, sis, you got some work to do too. And no matter how we try to point that out, the conversation doesn't go forward. That's the first point. Second point is this. I want to bring a definition up here because I think it's important. But before, because I'm gonna stop. I just want to bring this definition to the forefront because it's important. Let me just get this off really quick, and I promise you I'm gonna stop. But gaslighting. Why is it important? I'm not using the terminology just to throw out like buzzwords. I'm using it because if we're going to have a real conversation that's rooted in healing and development, then we got to know when we're being harmful to the other party in the conversation. So it says it's making someone seem or feel unstable, irrational, and not credible, making them feel like what they're seeing or experiencing isn't real, that they're making it up, that no one else will believe them. Gaslighting, right? That's the definition here. So when my sister #BlackWoman says that Black men have this imaginary boot on their neck and she needs to be with a group of men that don't have this imaginary oppression, is that not gaslighting?
This terminology of the boot on the neck, from my best recollection, came about in the 70s in the black community. And you guys have carried that into generation after generation. This just didn't occur last week in the conversation that we had, in which I think it was Brother Macon admitted that the children are being raised in single parent household because the men aren't there. This boot on the neck thing has been an excuse. And we got to identify these responses or rebuttals that you guys are using as exactly what they are, and they are excuses.
So let's.
My thing.
It is a crutch at this point.
For 1 second, hold on for 1 second, Miss Hashtag. My thing is, what next? Because one point that hashtag Black Woman made just a little while ago is that she refuses to believe that she can't do better. And yes, we can't have this conversation about Black women's ego without talking about Black men. And it's nonsensical to try to separate the two of us when we are talking about us joining and becoming a union. Okay, so we got to have the conversation about Black men while we're having the conversation about Black women. And so hashtag Black Woman said just a little while ago, I just lost my point when I saw that comment, but one thing I wanted to say, you said, when can Black men begin to hold Black women accountable?
No. I didn't say when can Black men, because I don't operate like that. I said when can we, just as a community,
well, we as a community,
yeah,
we can begin to do that when Black men bring to fruition the things that you talked about all in season 1 of your show that you mentioned.
What did I talk about in season 1?
Well, the things that you mentioned, that what Black men can do to be better leaders, what Black men can do to create stronger communities and all of that type of stuff. When those things are brought manifest, then you guys can talk to the women about the women not doing their job or falling short in whatever ways they are.
See, this is where I got to give you a little bit of pushback here.
You keep interrupting me.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Where's my manners? Go ahead.
Get on everybody else for interrupting. Okay,
You're right.
Thank you so much. Until Black men bring those things to life, you cannot expect Black women to do anything but follow the example that you guys are showing. The community is the way it is because Black men have yet to step up and start to lead the way. Period. As much power as Black women have and ambition and dedication and yada, 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 we cannot do it without Black men first paving the way. I believe men are first and women are second. We cannot, from my perspective, begin to change anything or change the trajectory of our community unless Black men first begin to lead the way. But first, because I know you got something to say, first, let me.
All right, ChezCharde, I want you to get in here because I think I answered all 3 of your questions. I'm not going to let you get the 4th. You can come back with the 4th. ChezCharde, you jump in.
Well, again, thank you for having me. There are many points raised, so I'm gonna attempt to address them and then go back to I think the overall issue, which is just the Black woman's ego. So, first, to touch on the concept of there being an imaginary boot on the neck of Black men or the Black community. I struggle with this because I think in order to come to that conclusion, you would have to overlook obvious historical facts. Slavery, Jim Crow, Reconstruction, redlining, and even now gentrification, things that disproportionately affect Black communities and even brown communities today where Black women live. And so, when we have these conversations, to me, I think, again, it could become a little disingenuous, or it can sound as if we're talking out of both sides of our mouth, because on one end we say, okay, Black men need to build, Black men need to lead. But then we've also had the last few decades of feminism. Black women overwhelmingly vote for feminist policy. So it's like we say we are strong, independent, don't need no man. I've heard that for years, different media programming, different, shows, television shows. We all heard that. I'm a strong, independent, woman. I don't need no man.
We all voted for feminism.
Let me finish my point.
Please.
Yeah. So it's like, again, we've heard that. And when we actually look at the voting patterns, we understand what's going on. But then when we have these conversations, it's like we talk traditional, but then we move feminist, as far as, the way, again, overwhelmingly the way that we vote. Not to say that's everybody, but that's kind of what the voting pattern shows. So it's a little bit, to me, it's just disingenuous, because I'm like, and if what we're saying is like, okay, we want these men to come up and build, what we are essentially asking is for a black male patriarchy. If white men essentially are the model that we were looking at as far as, okay, this is what masculinity could look like, we're now asking for a black male patriarchy. I don't know that, this is my opinion, I don't know that black women as a collective would truly, fully want a black male patriarchy that is reflective of a white male patriarchy, because this is precisely why feminism started. White women were not happy with the patriarchal system and how that treated them. So this is why I think this conversation, it can be a bit confusing, because it's like, we say we want traditional men, but then we move feminist.
I'm sorry, that is a complete lie, and that's complete. That's a complete lie.
Let me finish my point. So that's one thing, like I said, to me, that I think can be a little bit confusing. And then when it's, this conversation about, women are doing so much better, I always ask, okay, in what capacity? Because again, going back to, Black feminism, very much, or this idea of, Black women needing to be empowered is under this idea that they're being oppressed. So it's like, how are you oppressed, but you're also doing better? For example, you think of the idea of the gender wage gap. This is a common talking point today, that the women are not paid as well as the men. So it's like, that's prime example. How are we complaining about a gender wage gap, but we're empowered and doing better than our men? So these are all things to me that I really have a hard time making sense of, because when you just look at it point for point, it doesn't add up. Now, when we go back to the Black female ego, I would say this. I agree with, your points, Omawali, about, obviously the different things that have happened institutionally have, of course, impacted the Black community and the Black relationship. If you understand, even if you just look at history in general and just economics on a basic level, and you see when different groups of people are impacted economically, that does go and impact the relationships. It impacts their families. It impacts how men and women work together. So I do agree that the ways that different policies and things have disproportionately affect Black people, not to mention all of the other racial and socioeconomic things that have done to work against us. As far as the Black female ego, I do think there has to be an honest conversation about the fact that, this is just my opinion, culturally, I just don't think it's necessarily as acceptable for you to criticize women. Even if you think about the whole idea of like just big mama, and in Black culture, like you could talk about dad, you could talk about anybody, but as soon as you talk about somebody's mama, as soon as you like capped on their mama, those were fighting words. And that's like in our culture, it's like, it's very much, even if you understand in African culture and the connection there, where it's like respect for women is very much a part of
Uh-oh, don't go digging into those deep sea scrolls.
I know, but
that's what hashtag Black women said. I laid out the deep sea scrolls of
it is. But either way, even if we wanted, even
going back to 1600, we gotta go back to the 1600s.
Yeah, if you want to go to America, right? It's like in this culture, you just can't really criticize women. That has not really been a normal thing. And I'm never about creating a platform where you just, say Black women are horrible, or, it's not about trying to tear them down, but it's like, I think it's okay to have a conversation and say, you know what? Yeah, there are things that we do or have done as a collective that we need to own up to. Yeah, there are different behaviors, maybe it's beliefs. Because look, there's a lot of things that I believed about Black men that once I actually started to do a little bit of deep dive, I found out that they were just flat out wrong. I just found out they were wrong.
Really quick, I want to get